Authority. So making sure we've got the appropriate structures in place, decision making is clear, any risk, where that risk sits, etc. So just making sure that those three entities are working well together, and we're doing a lot of that at a workstream level, but we're also doing it at a programme level where I have regular engagement with kind of similar people within RCT and Cardiff Council. So we're trying our best to mitigate that risk as best we can. And then the final risk in the spaces are in clarity of message. So I think a lot of what we're doing does have an impact on people, primarily within our organisation. There's an impact directly on people who will have to consider 2-pay, etc. But then also there's our wider stakeholder group, you know, all the 10 constituent authorities, the National Park Authority, and just making sure we've got a kind of clear, you know, people get clear message and understand what it is we're trying to achieve, why we're trying to achieve it, but also what impact, input they can have into that as well, which is really helpful. So alongside that risk, and with those in the updates, there's a lot of decisions that are coming forward in the next few weeks or months. So primarily, obviously, today's meeting, we've had a couple of decisions on scrutiny arrangements and standards and governance and audit committee. So I think those, you know, those are kind of setting us in train. We've had a few decisions over the last couple of months in things like staffing, 2-pay, etc. And in the September's meeting, I think probably steps up the number of decisions that we're going to be asking the CJC to make. And primarily to make ready for the day one operations in October. So such things as interim constitution. So currently we've got some standing orders for the CJC, but we'll have to, we're currently evolving that into an interim constitution that will be in place between October and the end of the financial year. We'll be looking at an updated business plan, and I'll come on to that in a second. Some areas around people, so things like target operating model, pension arrangements, and any required things we need to do to enact the pension position. The potential for an outline governance model to again sort of sit in this space between October and March. And is anything we've got to do in closing out the statutory committee actions, and then again this setting up of a strategic vision for the CJC. So there's quite a lot coming in September. So I wanted to use this opportunity to kind of warm the committee up to that. And then I'll just run through very quickly some of the kind of dependencies. I think I won't go through them line by line, but you'll see again that the finance team are really a core dependency, primarily because they touch upon every function of the organisation, both the people side of it, the project side of it, and the corporate entity side of it. So there's a lot of interaction with finance, and like I say, there's some capacity coming on stream, and just making sure we're using that to maximum effect. The final area I wanted to touch on was a very quick finance update. There's a little bit of narrative underneath the financial implications section of the report, which mentions the current budget, and we believe that that's going to be a sufficient budget to get us through to the end of this financial year. There may be a little bit of balancing between some stuff that goes on within the city deal side of things and some within the CJC, but primarily that's a balancing act. But if one thing shifts over, then the funding will shift from one side to the other, but it balances each other out. But in September, we will be bringing forward a paper which lays out the remainder of this year's budget, but then also looks at the budget setting for next financial year and in the medium-term financial plan. And that's going to look very different this year, because last year we had two budgets, one for the CJC, one for the city deal, and they were kept very separate. Next year it's going to be one budget looking at the whole entirety of the operation. So that's something that will come in September. We'll have a longer lead-in time than perhaps usual, and the requirement to set both an annual budget but a kind of a 4 or 5 year look ahead as well. So there's going to be quite a lot of change coming in terms of budgets, and also obviously helping local authority partners understand potential budget implications. The last couple of years budgets have been funded straight out of reserves, so funding that was already held by the city deal on behalf of the local authorities. But this next financial year we'll look at its entirety, contributions, all that good stuff. So there's a lot of things coming in September compared to previous years. That's the transition update. I'd like to talk very briefly on regional transport planning or strategic development planning, but I'm happy to pause, Chair, if you'd like, for any questions on transition.
Sorry, Chair, you're on mute. Thank you. Do we have any comments or questions? Thanks very much. That was comprehensive, very clear. I can see we're going to have a very busy autumn with regards to the transition. We're being asked colleagues to just note this report. And do we have a mover and a seconder?
I've got a little bit on regional transport planning and strategic development planning. If you don't mind, Chair, sorry, I'll just.
Of course.
Apologies. Yes. So we've included into this transition report a little bit of an update on those two items. So, I mean, very much the regional transport plan, the strategic development plan are areas which we are working together and are very live. So there's a lot of things going on in both those areas at the moment, and both Welsh Government's hope and our approach is to align these things as closely as possible, as closely as we can. So on the regional transport plan, the guidance was released about 14 days ago. So since this report was written, guidance has been released. And we realise that brings that into sharp focus. There's a lot of work to do on timescales, so we need to consider an implementation plan to Welsh Government by October. So in the September meeting of the CJC, we'll be bringing back a draft implementation plan. And I just should note that there was a draft implementation plan that went to the Regional Transport Authority a few weeks ago, but based upon the guidance changes, that will change significantly as well. And so there's also a lot of meetings going at the moment. So we're meeting with the WLGA and Welsh Government on Wednesday for some clarifications. And there's also a kind of new requirement that we, in the regional transport plan must include a regional transport delivery plan, which sets out how local authorities will deliver in collaboration. So that's something new and something we're going to have to work through and think about and consider. So regional transport planning, regional transport delivery plan, etc. So it's quite a lot in that space, and it's moving and changing quite rapidly. But there'll be a report at the end of September on regional transport plan, and and the implementation plan for that. That's going to go back to Welsh Government. On the strategic development plan, again, so the guidance on that is slightly behind the transport planning. It is due in the spring, but draft guidance has been given out to local authority partners, as well as some advisory notes. So the idea for the strategic development plan is a delivery plan, an implementation plan for that by the end of this financial year. And in order to do that, the CJC colleagues have been engaging with the local authority planning department through the various groups, the South East Wales Planning Officers Group and the likes, and making sure that the primarily focused on the delivery plan, getting a plan together that we can submit to Welsh Government, but also the alignment of the strategic development plan and local development plans, which is a critical part. And some of the timings are going to make that quite a difficult activity, but it certainly needs to take place. So there's a lot of close working with planning officers to produce that delivery plan, and hopefully, like I say, we're going to bring something back at the end of September on that basis. The final point on both of these is there is some potential for Welsh Government funding in the space. It's mentioned in the financial implications as well. If that becomes available and we're able to access it through these implementation plans, that's going to help towards some of the costs at that sort of strategic level. But the CJC has to make sure it's in the position to be able to receive those funds and enact any terms and conditions as well. So we've got to make sure, again, this comes back to implementation of transition, that the day one we're in place, we've got all the right things in place to be able to sign up to any funding available from Welsh Government. And I think that is, I'll close there, but any questions on regional transport planning or strategic development planning?
Thank you, Mike. Julian.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm just flagging up really in terms of the strategic development plan work. I just wanted to underline the fact that although our planners are advising that there is good work going on in the South East Wales Strategic Planning Group, only very much the sort of start of the process is taking place because of all the resourcing issues that are going to take place for all the authorities, including indeed the Brecon Beacons National Park Authority, as we have 3 of the regional CJCs to support. So quite a significant issue, I think, in terms of resources, not just for the national park, but for planners across the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mike, for the update. I'm just wondering what sort of timeline we can consider for a strategic development plan. As you know, it is really is holding up local development plans now, as Welsh Government wants that overarching plan. And of course, I certainly feel that local councils are left as a place less likely to receive investment when there's no surety of a plan. And I feel we're in a bit of no man's land at the moment. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. I'll hand over to Col was going to take that question.
Yes, absolutely, Councillor Morgan. So I've been working with SOPUGs and SOPOS on exactly this issue. So we've sequenced out the LDPs across the region, where they are, where we expect them to be. And in fact, with a couple of the LDPs, we've had discussions, particularly in relation to Caerphilly and to Monmouthshire. We've had discussions with Welsh Government about alignment with Future Wales 2040. And also how we're going to manage route LDPs. The solution we've reached is some work is being commissioned by SOPOS, by officers and SOPOS and SOPUGs, to give Welsh Government surety that the strategic development plan, we're only in delivery agreement stage at the end of this financial year. It's 2028 before it becomes a reality with LDP lights sitting beneath it. So we've reached an agreement on what evidence Welsh Government will need to say, continue with your LDPs, show that they're being developed in a complementary way, they're being aligned with the strategic development plan development, and they're being aligned with Future Wales 2040. That's no mean feat, but we're very confident, speaking to planning officers, that we can develop the evidence base, we'll be able to do that. Welsh Government wants surety that we're working in the right direction and in a complementary way across the 10 local authorities and the national park. So we've got the report, which will come back for September, CJC board, will outline how we're tackling that exact problem, but we're very aware of it and we're working really closely with colleagues to that end.
Okay, thanks, Colin.
Thank you. Not without its risks, I guess. Do we have any more questions? Colleagues, we're just being asked to note the approach and the transition activities. Do we have a mover and seconder for this?
Happy to move.
Happy to
Seconder?
second, Chair.
Thank you. Are we all in agreement? If I can show your hands. Thank you. That's the Mary, you've got your hand up.
Yes, apologies, Chair. We ought really to have had a formal election of the chair for this meeting, so I'm just ask if we could do that now. If someone could move that you are elected as chair and someone seconded and vote on that. We should have done that earlier. My apologies.
Thanks very much,
Mary
Mary. I was astonished as everyone else when I suddenly became chair.
Can I second that, please, Chair?
Thank you very much. I think that's noted. And with that, I'll draw the meeting to a close. Thank you, everyone. You've got your hand up again, Mary.
Apologies, that's my IT lack of skill. I'll
that's
take it down.
good. I thought you were going to ask us to vote for something else then.
Certainly not.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.